Hi everyone. Welcome back. We are going to read chapter 12 today. Just a brief recap, we left Jonas in chapter 11. He had just received his first three memories from the past, and those were the sledding memory of the snow and the hill, the memory of sunshine, and the memory of sunburn. And I think that's about where we are. So we are in chapter 12, and let's go ahead and get started. You slept soundly, Jonas? His mother asked at the morning meal. No dreams? Jonas simply smiled and nodded, not ready to lie, not willing to tell the truth. I slept very soundly, he said. I wish this one would, his father said, leaning down from his chair to touch Gabriel's waving fist. The basket was on the floor beside him. In its corner, beside Gabriel's head, the stuffed hippo sat staring with its blank eyes. So do I, Mother said, rolling her eyes. He's so fretful at night. Jonas had not heard the new child during the night because as always, he had slept soundly. But it was not true that he had no dreams. Again and again, as he slept, he had slid down that snow-covered hill. Always in the dream, it seemed as if there were a destination, a something he could not grasp what. That lay beyond the place where the thickness of the snow brought the sled to a stop. He was left upon awakening with the feeling that he wanted, even somehow needed, to reach the something that waited in the distance, the feeling that it was good, that it was welcoming, that it was significant. But he did not know how to get there. Okay, so this dream about him sledding down the hill and then stopping and then feeling like there's something else in the distance is in fact foreshadowing. This particular dream is foreshadowing the very end of the book, so just something to keep in mind. He tried to shut off the leftover dream, gathering his schoolwork and preparing for the day. School seemed a little different today. The classes were the same: language and communications, commerce and industry, science and technology, civil procedure and government, but during the breaks recreation periods and the midday meal, the other new 12s were abuzz with descriptions of their first day of training. All of them talked at once, interrupting each other hastily, making the required apology for interrupting, then forgetting again in the excitement of describing the new experiences. Jonas listened. He was very aware of his own admission not to discuss his training, but it would have been impossible anyway. There was no way to describe to his friends what he had experienced in the annex room. How could you describe a sled without describing a hill and snow? And how could you describe a hill and snow to someone who had never felt height or wind or that feathery, magical cold? Even trained for years as they all had been in precision of language, what words could you use which would give another the experience of sunshine? So it was easy for Jonas to be still and to listen. So, if you recall, when the chief elder was, giving her speech about Jonas being selected to be the new receiver, she had said that the receiver would be alone and apart from the rest of the community. And we've already talked about where we've seen that so far, the fact that the giver can lock his doors and shut off the speaker in his room. And when even immediately after the ceremony, when Jonas was announced as the new receiver of memory, we saw that his friends started treating him a little differently. So this right here, with the kids talking about their first day of training and how excited they are about their new jobs and everything, and Jonas's inability to do the same, is further separating him from not only his group of people, or the group of kids that he's been with his entire life so far, the group of 12s, but also it's separating him further from the rest of the community. Because remember, Jonas is not allowed to talk about his training. It was in one of the rules. And he says, too, that even if he could talk about it, he wouldn't even know how to put it into words. Because remember, nobody else in the community knows what snow is, what sledding is, what sunshine is, and they don't even have the words to, describe it. Jonas doesn't. So he just feels very alone and separate from everybody else, which was already was warned to us when he was first selected. After school hours, he rode again beside Fiona to the house of the old. I looked for you yesterday, she told him, so we could ride home together. Your bike was still there, and I waited for a little while, but it was getting late, so I went on home. I apologize for making you wait, Jonas said. I accept your apology, she replied automatically. I stayed a little longer than I expected, Jonas explained. She pedaled forward silently, and he knew that she expected him to tell her why. She expected to describe his first day of training. But to ask would have fallen into the category of rudeness. You've been doing so many volunteer hours with the old, Jonas said, changing the subject. There won't be much that you don't know already. Oh, there's lots to learn, Fiona replied. There's administrative work, and the dietary rules, and punishment for disobedience. Did you know that they use a discipline wand on the old, the same as for the small children? And there's occupational therapy, and recreational activities, and medications, and they reached the building and braked their bikes. I really think I'll like it better than school, Fiona confessed. Me too, Jonas agreed, wheeling his bike into its place. She waited for a second as if again she expected him to go on. Then she looked at her watch, waved, and hurried toward the entrance. Jonas stood for a moment beside his bike, startled. It had happened again. The thing that he thought of now as seeing beyond. This time it had been Fiona who'd undergone the fleeting, indescribable change. As he looked up and toward her going through the door, it happened. She changed. Actually, Jonas thought, trying to recreate it in his mind, it wasn't Fiona in her entirety. It seemed to just be her hair. And just for that flickering instant, he ran through his mind. It clearly was beginning to happen more often. First the apple a few weeks before. The next time had been the faces in the audience at the auditorium just 2 days ago. Now, today, Fiona's hair. Frowning, Jonas walked toward the annex. I will ask the giver, he decided. The old man looked up, smiling, when Jonas entered the room. He was already seated beside the bed, and he seemed more energetic today, slightly renewed and glad to see Jonas. Welcome, he said. We must get started. You're 1 minute late. I apologize, Jonas began, and then stopped, flustered, remembering there were to be no apologies. He removed his tunic and went to the bed. I'm 1 minute late because something happened, he explained, and I'd like to ask you about it if you don't mind. You may ask me anything. Jonas tried to sort it out in his mind so that he could explain it clearly. I think it's what you call seeing beyond, he said. The giver nodded. Describe it. Jonas told him about the experience with the apple, then the moment on stage when he had looked out and seen the same phenomenon in the faces of the crowd. Then today, just now, outside, it happened with my friend Fiona. She herself didn't change exactly, but something about her changed for a second. Her hair looked different, but not in its shape, not in its length. I can't quite... Jonas paused, frustrated by his inability to grasp and describe what had occurred. Finally, he simply said it changed. I don't know how or why. That's why I was 1 minute late, he concluded, and looked questioningly at the giver. To his surprise, the old man asked him a question which seemed unrelated to the seeing beyond. When I gave you the memory yesterday, the first one, the red on the sled, did you look around? Jonas nodded. He said, but the stuff, I mean the snow, in the air made it hard to see anything. Did you look at the sled? Jonas thought back. No, I only felt it under me. I dreamed of it last night, too, but I didn't remember seeing the sled in my dream either, just feeling it. The giver seemed to be thinking. When I was observing you, before the selection, I perceived that you probably had the capacity, and what you described confirms that. It happened somewhat differently to me, the giver told him. When I was your age, about to become the new receiver, I began to experience it, though it took a different form. With me it was, well, I won't describe that now. You wouldn't understand. You wouldn't understand yet. But I think I can guess how it's happening with you. Let me make a little test to confirm my guess. Lie down. Jonas lay on the bed again, and with his hands at his side. He felt comfortable here now. He closed his eyes and waited for the familiar feel of the giver's hands on his back. But it didn't come. Instead, the giver instructed him, call back the memory of the ride on the sled. Just the beginning of it. You're going the way you're at the top of the hill before the slide starts, and this time look down at the sled. Jonas was puzzled. He opened his eyes. Excuse me, he asked politely, but don't you have to give me the memory? It's your memory now. It's not mine to experience any longer. I gave it away. But how can I call it back? You can remember last year, or the year that you were a 7 or a 5, can't you? Of course. It's much the same. Everyone in the community has one-generation memories like those, but now you will be able to go back further. Try. Just concentrate. Jonas closed his eyes again. He took a deep breath and sought the sled and the hill and the snow in his consciousness. There they were, with no effort. He was again sitting in that whirling world of snowflakes atop the hill. Jonas grinned with delight and blew out his own steamy breath into view. Then, as he had instructed, he looked down. He saw his own hands, furred again with snow, holding the rope. He saw his legs and moved them aside for a glimpse of the sled. Dumbfounded, he stared at it. This time it was not a fleeting impression. This time the sled had continued to have, as he blinked and stared at it again, the same mysterious quality that the apple had so briefly. And Fiona's hair. The sled did not change, it simply was whatever the thing was. Jonas opened his eyes and was still on the bed. The giver was watching him curiously. Yes, Jonas said slowly. I saw it in the sled. Let me try one more thing. Look over to the bookcase. Do you see the very top row of books, the ones behind the table on the shelf? Jonas sought them with his eyes. He stared at them, and they changed. But the change was fleeting. It slipped away the next instant. It happened, Jonas said. It happened to the books, but it went away again. I'm right then, the giver said. You're beginning to see the color red. The what? The giver sighed. How to explain this? Once, back in the time of memories, everything had a shape and size, the way things still do, but they also had a quality called color. There were a lot of colors, and one of them was called red. That's the one that you were starting to see. Your friend Fiona has red hair. Quite distinctive, actually. I'd noticed it before. When you mentioned Fiona's hair, it was the clue that told me that you were probably beginning to see the color red. In the faces of people, the ones at the ceremony? The giver shook his head. No, flesh isn't red, but it has red tones. There was a time, actually, you'll see this in the memories later, when flesh was many different colors. That was before we went to sameness. Today, flesh is all the same, and what you saw was red tones. Probably when you saw the faces take on the color, it wasn't as deep or vibrant as the apple, your friend's hair. The giver chuckled suddenly. We've never completely mastered sameness. I suppose the genetic scientists are still hard at work trying to work the kinks out. Hair like Fiona's must drive him crazy. Jonas listened, trying hard to comprehend. In the sled, he said, it had the same thing, the color red, but it didn't change, Giver. It just was. Because it's a memory from the time when color was. It was so... Oh, I wish language were more precise. The red was so beautiful. The giver nodded. It is. Do you see it all the time? I see all of them, all the colors. Will I? Of course, when you receive the memories. You have the capacity to see beyond. You'll gain wisdom, then along with colors, and lots more. Jonas wasn't interested just then in wisdom. It was the colors that fascinated him. Why can't everyone see them? Why did colors disappear? The giver shrugged. Our people made the choice to go to sameness. Before my time, before the previous time, back and back and back. We relinquished color when we relinquished sunshine and did away with differences, he thought for a moment. We gained control of many things, but we had to let go of others. We shouldn't have, Jonas said fiercely. The giver looked startled at the certainty of Jonas's reaction. Then he smiled wryly. You've come quickly to that conclusion, he said. It took me many years. Maybe your wisdom will come more quickly than mine. He glanced at the wall clock. Lie back down now. We have so much to do. Giver, Jonas asked as he arranged himself again on the bed. How did it happen to you when you were becoming the receiver? You said that seeing beyond happened to you, but not the same way. The hands came to his back. Another day, the giver said gently. I'll tell you another day. Now we must work. And I've thought of a way to help you with the concept of color. Close your eyes and be still now. I'm going to give you a memory of a rainbow. Alright, so we have been talking about these changes that Jonas keeps seeing, and now we finally know that what's changing is the fact that he can see the color red. So we saw it in the apple, the faces in the crowd, and now Fiona's hair. And I want to talk really quickly about why the community would do away with color to begin with. As humans, we give meaning to things that don't necessarily need meaning. So we give meaning to color, right? And especially now, if you can think of the different races in the world, obviously the color of your skin has meaning, and we fight over it. So they did away with that so that that wouldn't happen anymore, essentially. And that's why they don't have color in the community anymore. And we're going to stop there for today.